Today we have with us Joyce Brand. She's a writer and editor who specializes in free trade cities, and she writes and examines the incentive dynamics of traditional governance structures and how they might be improved through free trade models. Uh, so thank you, Joyce. And please feel free to introduce yourself more, and we can go in the dynamic that you would want if you want to ask questions or have a conversation or whatever you'd like to do. The floor is yours.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here. And what I don't want to give a lecture. What I'd like to do is share with you uh, the topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is free cities. That's actually voluntary governance. But I wanted to ask you some questions to be sure what like what you already know, so I'm not repeating anything. Um, I guess as far as introduction, I'm I've lived in the number one free city in the world, the freest city in the world, which is Ciudad Morazán in Honduras, which I want to tell you about. But I wanted to start with telling you more about free cities in general, the what and the why. Am I seeing, is the camera seeing everybody or only a part of the class? I'd like to get a show of
About
hands.
two-thirds of us.
Yeah, I'd like
Whatever.
to get a show of hands on what you guys already know about free cities. As far as a show of hands on who is already familiar with the concept of free cities. I know I saw one person. There's a couple, three. Cool. How about special economic zones? Are you familiar with those? Okay. Um, Intentional communities, that concept. Um, Network states. Have some of you heard of network states? Okay, that doesn't look as familiar. Okay, which is fine. And seasteading, of course, we know at least one person knows about seasteading. Oh yeah, most of you know about seasteading. That's cool. Um, okay, I guess the first thing, what free cities are, the definition is changing all the time. It's such a new movement that there's a lot of different definitions of what makes a free city. Um, and all of those things that I just mentioned, like special economic zones, intentional communities, network states, they all have elements of being free cities or can be cities. And perhaps seasteading is the biggest opportunity for free cities that exists. Um, so there's the main thing that defines free cities is that they are designed to promote freedom, individual liberty. Uh, the What I like to talk about is voluntary consent-based governance, because that's almost all of them have a real emphasis on voluntary consent-based governance because they're smaller jurisdictions where they can actually uh, be consent-based, contrary to um, the 200 or so nation states in the world. How many of you are familiar with Franz Oppenheimer's distinction between uh, the two means of acquiring resources? The Yeah, I see some hands. The political means, or the economic means, and the political means. Yes, obviously. Um, I'd like to propose that not only is it the means are different, but also the way of thinking about society is different. When you think about politics, you think about force. I mean, government is force. Government and politics, all based on force of one way or another. And perhaps humanity's biggest challenge with the way we've evolved is figuring out ways to um, sort of to understand what we actually need from governance and to find a way to, I don't know, live with it, exist with it. I mean, considering evolution, we started out with government as, protection. I don't want to get too deep into this, but starting out with government being necessary as protection, tribes, one tribe protecting from another. And the belief was that this was necessary. You had to have the rules and the protection. And so obviously our ancestors gave up their freedom to, for the protection of governments that also ruled them and decided what that protection was worth, usually taxes in kind. But it's still always been a matter of force in one way or another. Even, I mean, from the tribal life to kings and empires and dictators, government always meant force. It always meant either coercion, which is the threat of force, and we think of government that way as what is the way to manage that force so that we can get what we want without injustice and things like that. And obviously politics is the whole thing about thinking politically is thinking about how to use force. What I propose is to think about it more in an economic way. Economics is the study of human action to fulfill needs. And if we think of governance as economically, it's a service that the original service was, protecting people from, pirates or brigands or raids or whatever. And it sort of evolved. It took the idea of the power to protect, evolved into the power to control. And as governments have grown, especially since the nation state, governments have grown to find more and more services to offer in order to, justify their being and exert their power. The more it hasn't been thought of as services. Most people don't think of governance as being a service because it's become so much more in controlling our lives. So the economic idea of governance is that governance should be a service, just providing the things that we can't provide for ourselves. For instance, obviously security, that's a big one. That's probably the main one. It was historically the main one. The infrastructure, we can't build our own roads individually. And then, of course, the legal structure. We have to have a way to handle disputes between people. So I believe that those are the three main aspects of governance service that have to be supplied. Everybody wants those three: security, infrastructure, and some kind of legal system to handle disputes. And to get back to free cities, that I think is what free cities provide, is governance as a service, voluntary, consent-based, and it has to be decentralized so that people can leave. I mean, it's not voluntary if you can't leave, which is the problem with large nation states. It's extremely hard to leave the country where you're born. If you're looking at it for a jurisdiction that matches the rules that you want to live under, it has to be, you have to have the choice of different places to live and not be stuck in one place that you can't leave, that one size fits all. Everyone has to, live by the same rules. The vision is to have thousands of free cities all over the world so that people have a choice in what jurisdiction they want to live in and what rules they want to live under. And that is, when you look at it, like the Declaration of Independence talks about the consent of the governed, and the whole idea of representative democracy was self-government. How do we find a way to govern ourselves rather than being ruled by a monarch or a dictator or even a group of rulers? And I think voting seemed like the obvious way to, just self-govern. But when you think about it, voting is not really self-government at all, because it's not voluntary or self-government if you every few years have a chance to vote between two not so good alternatives. And that's why voluntary governance gives you more true self-governance and true democracy. Democracy is supposed to be ruled by the people, but the way people rule is rule themselves, or the only way they can really rule is through the choices they make in how they use their money, where they live. And that's what Free Cities wants to offer, is a way for people to find the place that they can live, where they can have the rule set that they want, rather than having to pay enormous taxes for, quote, services like wars around the world and things like that are obviously not what most people want. Most people want peace and prosperity. I think anybody disagree with that? I mean, that's kind of a normal or universal desire that human beings want to live in peace and prosperity. Aside from concepts of freedom or anything else, they want peace and prosperity. Are you with me? Let's see some hands. Okay, good. And that's the promise okay, to get back to free cities, the concept of free cities that's the promise of free cities, is that you can choose. If there are thousands all over the world, you can choose, because people are different and people do want different things. And the whole problem with centralized government is that everyone's being forced to pay for the same things and forced to live under the same laws, which may not make sense to all of them. So all of these free cities in particular are designed to fill a need in an economic way. You're all what economic experts or students, so how the whole principles of economics and how people make choices in what they want and what they're willing to pay. And the market always decides what's necessary. People know what they need. So if you think about governance in economic terms, it has to be for profit, because profit is what keeps any organization going. Businesses survive by profit. It shows their health. It's how they maintain themselves and how they grow. So governance should be profit-oriented, like business. And of course, you can't you can't do that when you've got our current coercive political systems or representative democracy. The country can't make a profit, and government officials don't have the profit incentive. And that's really, I see coercive political governance as being the biggest problem in the world that underlies all of the other problems in the world. I mean, anything you look at, like poverty or injustice or even environment, it all comes down to bad governance, which comes down to the political coercive governance. All of those things can be handled better if it's done on a market basis, an economic basis instead of a political basis. And the I guess that's the why for Free Cities is we want to create, instead of complaining about coercive political governance and all of the injustices we see around us and things we're forced to pay for that we don't want, instead of complaining about all that, the idea is to build something better, to make coercive political governance obsolete by offering more choices so that people can choose the environments they want to live in, the rule set that they want to live under. So that kind of gets us to the what. Are there any questions so far about the what and the why of Free Cities from what I've said so far? Yes?
So you believe the solution is to develop parallel societies, correct? That
Yes. Yes.
essentially act as market alternatives to the
Right.
government, to
Exactly.
the coercive. Got it.
Yes, that's exactly it. Thank you. Anybody else?
I
Yes?
would.
I'm very curious because I don't understand the technicalities or the mechanisms of the free private city. If you would mind elaborating on that a little bit, please.
That's exactly what I was hoping to get to next.
Perfect.
Yes, is we've got the what and the why, so the how is the next one. And that's how uh, at present there's a lot of different projects that are trying to become free cities. The uh, we all know that nation states don't want free cities. They don't want to lose control. Politicians don't want to lose control of their power. Uh, they don't want to give up territory. Um, so the how is negotiating with governments. We know we can't change an entire nation overnight, but we can negotiate with governments and show how economic freedom, as well as political freedom, can increase the prosperity of the people and even the surrounding areas. So what's mostly happening now is people negotiating with governments about allowing or enabling jurisdictions with their own rules. And this is where special economic zones, there's like thousands of them all over the world where they have different rules, but they're mostly just business-based, like export processing zones or free trade zones, or, most of them don't have residents. I mean, there are the very first really big special economic zones were like Shenzhen in China, which is obviously very coercive politically, but it allows economic freedom. And it's been a miracle in the way it's grown so fast. And it turned China from being a poor, struggling country with billions of people and so many of them starving into what's now what the rival of the United States, they say. I mean, that's a whole different subject, but still, China has changed so much once they allowed economic freedom. And that's what other cities like Singapore, well, Hong Kong and Dubai, those are all economic freedom cities they're not actually free cities because their only freedom is economic. And yet they've been incredibly beneficial to the surrounding area and the surrounding country that allowed them to exist, that gave them the autonomy to create the wealth that they've created. And that's what the idea of free cities is, not just economic, they're sort of an advance, the next step in special economic zones, where not only is it economic rules that are different, certainly a lot more than just different tax structures, it's actual autonomy, both political and a certain amount of political and certainly economic. And that's something that can be argued with people, especially in countries where they're struggling under, really bad governance that has kept the country poor. And Honduras is a good example of that. A country that's almost always, been poor, with terrible corruption in the government. But there were a couple of Hondurans who decided that they wanted their country to be prosperous. They wanted to bring prosperity. And the way to do that was to bring foreign investment into their country. The two men that were most responsible for it were Octavio Sanchez and Carlos Pineda, and they actually convinced the Congress of Honduras almost unanimously to pass this law allowing autonomy in small, very small areas that were where the land was purchased from willing sellers. And it wasn't a government project. The government spent no money on them. They just allowed private entrepreneurs to purchase the land and create their own regulations, tax systems, a wide range of freedom that is probably the most advanced legal system in the world for free cities. And I lived in one of those, Ciudad Morazán. And why I've learned so much about them is the ZEDEs are sort of a model, and especially Morazán is a model for how free cities can grow around the world. I mean, it's portrayed in the media as being foreigners taking over Honduras, we're selling Honduras to foreigners. I mean, that's colonialism and stuff, but it's not like that at all. It is, that's the way to do it, is to show the people that live there. If you can find government officials like Octavio and Carlos that want economic prosperity, they want the prosperity for their country, and they understand that allowing autonomy will do it. Allowing economic freedom is the way to go. And so that's that's the how that most of the people are working on it. Now, there's obviously a lot of situations. There's, like I mentioned, intentional communities. They have no legal autonomy, but they can sort of fly under the radar and design their own rules for living together, and achieve more freedom than in the surrounding areas. But they're not actually free cities because they are vulnerable to attack at any time. That's why seasteading can be such a great way to do it, because they're not as vulnerable to nation states attacking them. They're not taking sovereignty away from anyone. Or they can't be accused of taking sovereignty away from anyone. The network states, I didn't see too many people that have heard of network states. Balaji Srinivasan of Coinbase, he was CEO of Coinbase, and he's the one who wrote the book, Network States, which kind of got that concept really going. And the idea is to create a community in the cloud and then crowdfund it into a physical place eventually and gain recognition. I mean, that's part of the goal of network states, is to gain official recognition as states. That's just getting started. There are people already that are calling themselves nation state, or calling themselves network states. The main thing, the ideal that I want to talk about today is Morazán. It's the way that we're proving it actually works. And part of that involves Honduras, the government of Honduras. The two men that I mentioned who actually created the law and got the Congress to pass the law allowing so much autonomy were they got agreement from the whole Congress. It was almost unanimous when they passed the law. The government was corrupt. Everybody knew the government was corrupt, but even the corrupt government, even the corrupt officials in the government understood that it would be beneficial to bring prosperity to their country, if nothing more than as a way to keep themselves in power. I mean, I think that was their main motivation, was that they thought by bringing prosperity, they could stay in power, which makes sense. And that is our biggest selling point with governments, is that bringing prosperity can keep those politicians in power, which of course is what their incentive is. And it was working. It was working really well. Because there was so much corruption, it took a while. I mean, it was absolutely heroic the way particularly Carlos Pineda, worked with government bureaucrats in all kinds of areas to cooperate with the ZEDE law. ZEDE is the Zone of Employment and Economic Development in the Spanish acronym. The ZEDE law can be a model for new free cities all over the world, because it is so advanced. But it was hard to get officials, the bureaucrats, to go along with the actual way the law was supposed to work. In like customs, we especially had problems with customs officials. They didn't want to be cooperative, but there was enough political will, or there was enough people in the government to sort of force them to go along with it. And it was working. And that's the big thing that most people don't know about, is that it was actually working in all of the accomplishing all the things that it was meant to do. Morazán started and got all of the customs office set up and was importing and exporting. Prospera on the island of Roatan is the other ZEDE that's a free city, and it attracted, millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in foreign investment. And everything was going great until there was an election. And this is what everybody says, oh, but, political instability, you get new governments in. And sure enough, there was a new government that came in, socialist government, that ran on the idea that it was against corruption, which of course, who isn't against corruption? And they won because they were claiming to be against corruption. Now, that was in November of 2021, it fairly soon became obvious that they were just as corrupt as the other government. And so there's been a lot of regret about that election. But, and they did everything they could because they were socialists who want to emulate Venezuela and Cuba, which who would want to emulate those countries, but they did. And that's they have made it extremely difficult. They've broken all the laws. They haven't cooperated with any of the laws that they were supposed to cooperate with. And they've threatened, in Morazán in particular, they've threatened manufacturers that they would, or businesses from moving into the zone because they've threatened to expropriate their businesses. So they've caused a lot of problems for both Morazán and Prospera, but they haven't been able to stop us. And that's the big thing. With the extreme hostility of the government, there were enough legal safeguards written in that in spite of everything they've done, they haven't been able to shut us down. And so both Prospera and Ciudad Morazán are growing now in spite of all of the government opposition. And that's the exciting thing. The other thing about the two Zedes is that they're so different. Morazán was founded by and run by Massimo Mazzoni, an Italian businessman who'd built a conglomerate in Honduras. And his vision was that he wanted to create an environment where the Honduran workers could have a better quality of life. And so he bought land right kind of in the middle of the industrial section of Honduras, which a city called Choloma, which is known as probably the most dangerous city in the world that isn't in an actual war zone. It's run by gangs. I can tell you, it's people that want to have a small business. If they don't pay off the gangs, they'll have their businesses destroyed. In fact, and there's people murdered all the time if they refuse to pay off the gangs. The gangs come in and rob the products. So, it's a terrible situation, and it's totally, terrible place to live. The workers there, they were drawn to Choloma because of special economic zones that gave them work. But the problem was there was no infrastructure. The government didn't help them at all. They do live in shacks. I mean, there's a lot of people, the workers there that work in the maquilas, which are the textile factories. They don't have hot and cold running water. They don't have indoor showers. I mean, there's so many. They don't have glass in their windows. I mean, they are really living very, very poverty-stricken lives. And Massimo wanted to change that. He wanted to build a place where they could live a life of dignity. And he wanted to bring them jobs. And so the concept of Morazán was to build a city that had mixed use land where you had factories, industrial tenants, commercial tenants, residential tenants all together to form a community. And businesses and workers need each other. And I mean, there's so many people that characterize workers, employers and employees as being somehow opposed to each other. And that's not the case at all. With workers and employees, it's a voluntary association that benefits both. Workers need jobs and employers need workers. And that's what Massimo wanted to bring to Morazán. Now, because of the government obstruction. He had to sort of pivot to residential only at this point. But we've been, building residents. We now we've gotten over past 200 residents. We expected to have over 2,000 residents by this time, but things were delayed because of government opposition. But we're still, we've still grown from 0 to 200. So that's that's really showing that it works. People want to live there because what the city provides, is good quality housing that's affordable, the infrastructure to have the water and the sewage systems and the drainage and the streets and all of those things that people want. The main thing, the security is really the big thing, because people outside of Ciudad Morazán, they can't let their children go out unsupervised because they could be taken into gangs. Nobody really goes out after dark because it's too dangerous. But in Ciudad Morazán, I can, take a trip for a week and leave my door unlocked. I mean, that's how safe it is. There's not many communities, even in the US, that are that safe, let alone in some place like Honduras. The police, that's really an important thing, is they are private police. We have a private police force that are actually professional security guards, and their job is protection of life, liberty, and property. And they don't have any special rights that anybody else has. I mean, they don't have qualified immunity. They can be easily fired, even if they're just rude to people. I mean, because they are trained that the people that live there are the customers, and they have to be treated well. And in fact, the guards themselves live in the community. They're part of the community. So they're not an authority that comes in and enforces rules. Massimo created a rule set that makes sense for his market. People sign contracts agreeing to the rules, but the contract's two ways. And if he doesn't keep his promises that he's made in the contract, he can be taken to third-party arbitration for damages, which is, I mean, how many city governments have impartial arbitration if a resident has a disagreement with the city? So this is an example of how a free city can work. But I wanted to also contrast that with Prospera. That's the only other. There's just two ZEDEs that were approved, two ZEDEs with residents that were approved before the new government came in. And Prospera is on the island of Roatán, which is like a resort island in the Caribbean. It's right off the coast of Honduras. And its market is totally different. It's foreign investors. Instead of being funded by one person, which Massimo funds Morazán totally by himself, it's funded by a corporation with foreign investors, with businesses that are on the cutting edge of technologies. There's a lot of biotech and fintech and new manufacturing processes, things like drone deliveries. And I mean, they are doing really high-tech type of things there because that was their purpose. And so they have a different set of rules, where Morazán has sort of just made a simplified version of Honduran civil and commercial law. Prospera has a totally different legal system that allows or that even caters to businesses that are they have an e-residency program, and their market is mostly foreigners. But but they have that freedom. And so we're both under the same legal structure, the same autonomy, but that's the point, is the zones have the autonomy that they can cater to totally different markets. So the things that working class Hondurans want and the things that foreign investors want, or the more elite Hondurans who want to learn more about, have more opportunity for entrepreneurship, are also drawn to Prospera, where they've got, educational systems for those people. That's really the beauty of free cities, is that you can have two totally different cities with totally different markets and totally different goals under the same autonomy. I mean, if they have the autonomy, they can create those kinds of solutions to different problems. So that was the main thing that I wanted to talk about, to let you know about, to share with you what I know about the free cities. Are there any questions at this point?
Yes, actually, I had a question about do you have anything comparable to like a prison system? Like, I don't know if it's happened in any of the cities yet, but say someone commits murder, how do you deal with that?
That's a really good question. The Zetes particularly are still under Honduran criminal law. They reserved, I mean, they're autonomous, but they still have to follow Honduran constitution and criminal law and those kinds of, international treaties. But well, Morazán, we haven't had any crime. That we really haven't had any crime. I mean, the worst problem that we've had in Morazán is people letting their dogs go out and poop on the sidewalks. That's a pretty good problem to have, to be your worst problem. We haven't had any crime at all, but the way it would work if we did have crime, and Prospera hasn't had any crime either, but if we did have someone, I mean, I'm sure at some point there will be a violent crime. And when that happens, the process is that we call the Honduran police, the national police, and they arrest the person. They take the person to Honduran criminal court. If they're convicted, if it's a resident, we're obligated to imprison them. We haven't had to do that yet. I mean, if that ever happens, we'll have to construct somehow to imprison them. That's maybe it's kind of unique to the Zete law, that there will be other free cities that will have totally different criminal laws as well as commercial and civil laws. I don't know. Well, it hasn't, as far as I know, it hasn't happened yet. But does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, thank you. Very interesting.
Hi, Joyce. I'm curious. Perhaps this is like a semantical question, but do you like the term anarchism? Do the other citizens like the term anarchism? What do you think about the term?
Great question. I used to call myself an anarcho-capitalist because that's what I believe. But I've sort of changed that to what I think is a little bit more descriptive of what I actually believe, is voluntarism. Because I think, all interactions between human beings should be voluntary. Anarcho-capitalism has a lot of bad connotations, because anarchy can also mean chaos, and capitalism can also mean corporatism. So I don't really use that term very much. And as far as the residents of Morazán, they're not even libertarians. I mean, they're ordinary Hondurans who mostly aren't very political. They just want to, have a nice life where they have their safety. They can raise their children in safety, and have peace in their neighborhood. And we've got a waiting list. We're 100% occupancy with a waiting list, because that's what they value. They're not ideological at all. Now, I mean, I'm ideological. Massimo's ideological. He's he doesn't. I don't know if he actually calls himself an anarcho-capitalist. I think he probably does call himself an anarcho-capitalist, but not publicly. Prospera is the same thing. The ideas are, I mean, a lot of people call themselves classical liberals, but that can stretch all the way to anarcho-capitalist. And probably most of the people in Prospera, the more educated Hondurans and the foreigners, a lot of them probably consider themselves anarchists to a certain extent. But I'm not sure. It's not, mostly they're talking about just freedom and what they want to do and what they want to build and how they can use the ZA framework and all of the simpler regulations. So for instance, one of the things that Prospera is always accused of is they're really into biotech and longevity research that you can't do, certainly not in the United States, and where it costs billions to do all these kinds of tests and clinical trials and stuff like that. But they have insurance, so the insurance covers the safety of doing these advanced biotech clinical trials and tests. I was going to go somewhere with that. So what was my point? They're accused of being dangerous, but they're not, because they have insurance. They're accused of being dangerous because they don't have all of those regulations that are sometimes senseless. Regulations are meant to protect people, but insurance protects them better. Real insurance, not the kind of over-regulated insurance that we have in the US, but real insurance that's mitigating against risk. An insurance company won't insure them unless they're, if there's any chance that they're going to have to pay a lot of damages for, they're doing something harmful. So they're not doing anything harmful, even though they're accused of it. And insurance is such a better way than overregulation. Like COVID, allowing the pharmaceutical companies to not only not have insurance, but not even be liable. That's crazy. And that's what's dangerous, not running experiments on volunteers who are informed and having insurance to mitigate any risks.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Hi, Joyce.
Hi.
Hi. Are you familiar with Liberland?
Oh, yes.
What are your views? The last time I had a conversation with them, they wanted a direct democracy.
Yeah.
What are your views about Liberland and their,
Well, that Tidlinky doesn't have that great a reputation. I mean, there's sort of a feeling that he's a great marketer, but how dependable is he or whatever. There are some people that are very, very interested in Liberland and very excited about what they're doing there. My opinion is that it's not, I don't entirely trust the person that's running it, but I don't know for sure that there's anything wrong with him. The idea of being able to create a new country is wonderful. And if it could be recognized internationally, would be wonderful. So I'm all aboard on the idea. I just don't know as a project. I wouldn't particularly recommend it. There's too much, I don't know, too much, I don't know, problems with the surrounding country, the two countries that it's between, Croatia and Serbia, especially Croatia, is very opposed to it and is causing them all kinds of problems, making it extremely difficult for people to even get there. I'm not sure how much building they can do. So even the direct democracy, I mean, I think the true form of democracy is running a for-profit company. The best form of governance is being governed by a for-profit company that has to treat the people who are paying for it as paying customers rather than as taxed subjects. I don't believe in taxation. I think there are better ways to fund the services that governance provides. And in fact, the free private cities model is sort of based on a book by Titus Gebel, a German businessman. It's the free private cities model is totally, a for-profit city operator provides all the governance services for a fee. And again, like Massimo, it can be the city operator, the government can be sued in arbitration for damages. That's, to me, that's the best kind of democracy, is where it's totally people vote with their money. People vote for what they want. I mean, obviously, there's a sort of a I don't know, stereotype that this is some kind of colonialism or company town or something like that, where the person is a dictator. The founder, developer, whatever, is a dictator, that he's the king and what he says goes. But the thing is, if you're an entrepreneur and you're in business for a profit, you can't be a dictator. You have to listen to the customers. And everybody, any entrepreneur knows that that's the customer's king. I mean, the customer's always the one that you have to listen to, which is what makes it work. Did I see another question?
Yes, it was me.
Yeah.
So in talking about making new things, is crypto at all relevant to your concept of freedom? And what do you think that living in these like free cities or spaces where freedom is centered, what do you think that does to the spirit of the people that live there?
That sounds like two different questions.
It absolutely is. I've been thinking a lot. Promise I've been
Okay,
listening.
yeah, the question of cryptocurrency. Well, Prosper has a Bitcoin Academy, so
Mhm.
they accept Bitcoin. I mean, they're really great on Bitcoin. In Morazán, most of the people have never heard of Bitcoin. They're not used to those financial ideas, and it would be hard to get them to use Bitcoin, but they do have problems that are solved by cryptocurrency, by a stable coin. So Alex Ugorji created a stable coin based on the Honduran lempira, and most of the people in Morazan pay for their rent, utilities, um, things that they buy, snacks that they buy at the local pulperia. I mean, all of the businesses in Morazan accept this cryptocurrency as payment. And that saves the Hondurans. It solves the problem of really high bank fees in Honduras. So the ZE law, what it says is that the zone can create its own currency laws. It can make whatever it wants legal tender. So Morazan has chosen not to regulate currencies at all. Anybody can use anything for currency that they choose, totally free. But as a practical matter, the stable coin, it's called an ELP, e-lempira, is what people use, and it works for them.
I
Oh, and
love
the
that.
other question, I'm
That's
sorry,
that was a beautiful answer. Thank you.
the other question about what was that? What people think who live there about?
Mm, you can take this as like a spiritual question or one of like the vibes of the area, as we'll say. But yeah, what does living in these free cities do to the soul of a person living there? Like I guess you can take that as like spiritual, emotional, just the fabric of your reality. What does it mean to feel free all the time? Does that do anything to you? But, like, and for you
I think
personally, like, do you feel different living there?
um, me personally, I
Yeah.
yeah, I think uh, just the knowledge that I'm not um, that it's my choice, that it's uh, I I know that I enjoy live enjoy the feeling of freedom, the
Hmm.
feeling, but specifically, it's the environment that's created, which is not only me but the other people that live there. Just more of a feeling of community, even if people, well, it's a high trust community, and that's the thing that you don't necessarily need to hang out together all the time. But we do have community, we have a lot of community events. But aside from that, there's a feeling that you can count on the people, that you're safe there. And I think that feeling for, especially for the Hondurans who are used to really living in terrible environment, that is thing that they tell me is most valuable to them, the tranquility of the community. So I think that has a spiritual element to it. Prospera is different, but I know that the people who live there, I mean, I don't live there, but I know that they just now, just in the last year or so, started having their first residents. They built a 14-story building, which is the highest building on the island, and they've been renting out condominiums in the building, mostly to foreigners, and maybe all of them to foreigners. And I know in talking to them, they're so happy to have the opportunities that they have there, uh, to create things that they were never able to create in their own countries or um, in situations they were in before.
So actually, I thought about it differently. If we remove the spiritual language from it and we just refer to it as the social contract, does it feel like the social contract in being actually voluntary, you know what you're signing up for? Is that what you think changes the community? Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Sikh ideology at all, of like they're allied to who they like associate with ideologically. It's like a very like deracialized, there's a geographic element because they're Sikh and it's, they have their area. But yeah, if you could chew on that for a second.
Yeah, I know that there's a sense of community and a sense of shared purpose, and even places like the intentional communities where they talk about bringing together like-minded people. Um, I think just not having to live with people who have such different values
Mm.
creates a sense of community. I mean, the people, um, there's there's people from all over the world living in Prospera, all kinds of different countries, uh, with different cultures and all of that. But they certainly share a sense of excitement about what they can do in Prospera, what Prospera means to them. Um, Morazán, because it's such a different group of people, what they want is safety and to be able to trust their neighbors and to know that things, things are going to run the way they're supposed to. Um, that's what they have in common. Uh, yeah, the people that want to live there, mainly they want safety and peace.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Anyone else? We wanna end it? Okay, Joyce, thank you so much. It was a very thoughtful lecture. We truly appreciated it. We would love to see you again in the future. And yeah, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
thank you.
I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.